With the election drawing closer and closer with every passing day, ESPN has decided to put out a memo for their on-air talent to tell them what they can and can't do vis-a-vis political speech and talking about candidates and issues, who they are voting for, and things like that. So here are a few small sections from that memo. We should refrain from political editorializing, personal attacks, or drive-by comments regarding the candidates and their campaigns, including but not limited to on platforms such as Twitter or other social media. They did grant an exception to staffers at 538, the Nate Silver-founded property that regularly covers politics and sports using data. That makes sense.
Using data.
Yeah, exactly. They also... That's true. That's an attack on a lot of other media outlets.
Such a new idea.
If an employee is covering a candidate who appeared at a game or live event, they are to avoid political commentary or prolonged references, according to the memo. So, like, you can, like, mention Waterboy or Office Space, but you can't do a whole bunch of those references. Anyway, yeah, so it went on and on and on about the different things they can talk about, and basically, they don't want their hosts talking about politics. Now, this is a sports network, which I don't watch a lot of, so for those of you who might actually watch it, do you think it makes sense for them to sort of get out in front of this sort of thing? Should there be some open expression? I mean, you have people like Keith Olbermann who are obviously extremely experienced and talented with both the sports side, but they're also extremely politically
The problem comes more
opinionated.
from the right-wingers on ESPN, because Keith Olbermann, if he says something, yes, it might be political, but it's not going to be batshit crazy, racist, or fucking, off the charts, which is what happens. So that's a bigger problem. And I like what they call it, drive-by comments. Drive-by comments?
Yeah.
We had another drive-by commenting in Watts today. Let's go to the scene right now. Guy drove by, called me a dick, and it still hurts.
It hurts.
I got 3 other kids got hit by that same dick. There's kids here.
He called me a dick. He said something about the EPA. I don't know, for, against. It was a drive-by. There was no time.
It was a climate change thing. I don't know what. I heard climate change, global warming.
Carbon.
And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, scientists are all on the take.
Well, when I first read this, I was thinking I was going to be in the minority of thinking it's a good idea for ESPN. I mean, because you talked about Curt Schilling. He got in some issues last year when he tweeted stuff about the Nazis and compared them to Muslims. And then afterwards, after the suspension, because it was right when the MLB playoffs were happening, so he was off of the analyst team.
Yeah.
And he's one of the top analyst guys in the studio, I think. So he's off the team. They replaced him. And then he comes back. We can look at both these. I think this is the one with Ben Carson, this particular graphic. After getting back, he decides to post this to Facebook because he's like, Twitter. On Twitter, I've been busted on Twitter. So he takes to Facebook.
Curt, the thing about people who are racist, it's that they're so dumb. Right? Like he doesn't understand the difference. He doesn't understand what's wrong with that. He doesn't get that, right? Like that'd be like us saying because of Vietnam, we shouldn't have any Vietnamese presidents, or we shouldn't have any Serbian presidents, or we shouldn't have any German presidents, or whatever. You can keep going. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that doesn't. Curt Schilling goes, well, that sounds right.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have any of those presidents.
Yeah, because the difference between those positions is the preconceptions you have about one group as being distinct in some fundamental way from other sorts of people, but that is simply the bathwater they dwell in, so they can't see that they're surrounded by it.
They have no idea. Like literally so ignorant so dumb and ignorant that Curt Schilling tweets that out like, why doesn't he just put "I'm dumb" at the bottom? I'm really dumb.
They should all be signed that.
They should all be. How have Americans completely lost their minds? Besides me, I never had one to lose. I'm dumb, Curt Schilling.
By the way, not just Curt Schilling. 484 people are like, nailed it.
Like,
but what do you get from it? I mean, honestly, so I'm okay with it. Whether it's a progressive talking point to some conservatives saying posting this craziness. We can also do the first one that got Curt Schilling in trouble
show
with the Nazi one. This is what got him in the first trouble in the first place. So the post, this was the tweet. It said only 5 to 10% of Muslims are extremists. It's said. In 1940, only 7% of Germans were Nazis. How'd that go for you? And apparently the math is staggering.
So again, Muslims are like Nazis. Again, he should have at the bottom, I don't get things. I'm Curt Schilling, dumb guy on TV. So does Curt Schilling and Adam Baldwin get together and try to do math problems? Do they get together and try to figure out how to tie their shoes at the same time? How do you tie your shoes, Curt? I use slip-ons. I use slip-ons.
Velcro's the way to go.
Yeah. You know who else used slip-ons? Nazis.
I love just the little things you can figure out. Like this person who took that screenshot, not a follower of Curt Schilling. I like that. ESPN, they're a private corporation. They can limit certain types of speech. This is not the government. Most people don't understand what the First Amendment's actually about, but they're allowed to limit that if they want to. I think if they wanted to have it open that you can talk about that sort of thing, I think that in some ways that might help them because it might make the personalities seem more like real people as opposed to just sports figures from the past. But at the same time, people go and they want to watch sports and they want to figure out, what's going on with the team and the roster or whatever. And do they just want a random reference to Planned Parenthood? Probably not. There's a YouTube channel that I follow that's actually about board games. But anyway, it's a great channel, and they occasionally just go off on these discussions about religion that seem oddly out of place. They're allowed to do that 100%, and I still love the channel. But there is something to be said for having a bit of consistency in the sorts of things you talk about. And so ESPN is probably making the right choice.
Again, the reason why they're doing this is because they don't want to have to fire Curt Schilling.